Well, good afternoon, and thank you for that incredibly warm welcome. I deeply appreciate it. I want to start by saying to Blake that, Blake, you've been an amazing president of AALS, and it's an honor. Yes, give it up for Blake, please. Blake and I often say, and I think in many, many respects we mean this, that we are actually siblings. And but Blake, seriously, you really are a brother of the heart and spirit, and to be able to work so closely with you this year and then next year too, I just want to remind you and Dan too that you can check out but never leave, right? So anyway, please join me again in thanking and recognizing Blake Morant for an amazing term. Thank you all for being here on a Saturday afternoon. And before I share a few remarks about the upcoming year, I do want to also quickly thank several other people. Each of us is, after all, a real product of investment that people make in us. And I'm particularly delighted tonight that my parents are here from Bloomington, Indiana, and they made an amazing investment in me. Robert and Anita Testy are here. Say that they taught me to be kind and honest, and the rest was pretty easy after that. So I'm just delighted that they're here with me, and my partner Tracy Thompson and my son Michael is also here today. And so I really thank you for joining us. I want to also say a very deep thanks to 3 institutions that have been incredibly important to my development as an academic and as a professional. And I want to begin with my alma mater, Indiana University of Bloomington. A great thanks to all of my faculty there, but a particular thanks to my friend and mentor, Lauren Robel, who's also here today. Thank you very much, Indiana. Thank you, Lauren. And of course, I grew up at Seattle University and spent 17 years of my academic career there. It was incredibly important in my development, and I have such high regard for the school and my colleagues there. So I want to say a deep thank you to Seattle University. I also want to say a very deep thank you to the University of Washington. I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed being there, how much respect I have for that school's traditions and innovations. And so please join me in recognizing both Seattle University and the University of Washington. And of course, thank you to AALS. What an amazing organization. I want to thank the other members of the executive committee with whom I've so enjoyed serving. And just a tremendous thank you to a very inspirational leader in Judy Areen, the director of AALS. Judy, thank you so much for all that you do. The things we learn very quickly, and I think you especially see this as you become a dean, if you don't already know it, is that it takes a village to put on programs and to accomplish things. And so I also want to say a great thanks to all the staff of AALS who work so hard. They get up for 6 a.m. breakfast every morning while we're here to make sure this runs well. And particularly Tracy Thomas and Mary Cullen, who have been really the organizational leads for this. What a great job they've done for the conference. So thank you. Together at AALS, we are striving to enhance our leadership to better serve our member schools and to more forcefully and more effectively advocate for legal education. We respect and value our member schools' diverse missions and diverse goals. When you thrive, we thrive. Our present aim is to redouble our efforts to be of service to you, not to tell you what to do nor how to do it, but to support what it is that you all do so very well and what we respect you so very much for. We want to be a leading voice on your behalf, on behalf of legal education, both on our own, but also in collaboration and working effectively to find synergies among the many other organizations that also are important to legal education. I think it is one of those instances where together, if we can bond together, we can accomplish so much more, and so we're striving to do that. Now, as we look forward and look ahead to this year, I've selected a theme that I hope will be inspiring to our member schools and will also be one that can help AALS continue our advocacy for law and for legal education. And that theme I've chosen is the theme of why law matters. Why law matters. It's a theme designed to bring out the best of the Academy, to turn our vision outward to the world that we serve, and to explore at a very fundamental level why what we do matters in meeting all the serious challenges of our present social environment. So if you would, please permit me just a few minutes to share a little bit about my motivation for this theme, and then also briefly to outline 3 hopes that I have for the theme for this year. So first of all, as to the motivation for the theme of why law matters. In my view, the role of law in society is insufficiently understood or appreciated, and that gap is a harmful one. After over 12 years as a dean, 20-some as a professor, I'm still surprised by how hard it often is for even incredibly smart people to understand the importance of the rule of law to how the world works, or maybe more importantly, how the world may not work so very well. From students to the general public, to university presidents and provosts, to leaders of major foundations, law is often seen way too narrowly in my view. It's maybe at most seen as being about a system of dispute resolution rather than its broader role. And in that broader role, it's one that I call and often refer to as creating the ecosystem for human flourishing. I suppose that in this broader sense, that law can often be like the air that we breathe, perhaps noticed most by its absence rather than by its presence. But we can no more live healthy lives without the rule of law in this world than we can live without air. And waiting to appreciate its vital role until we're choking and gasping is not a good strategy. Rather, we need to make our case now for why law matters and the Academy's vital role in advancing respect for and understanding of the rule of law. In a 1974 article that was called Legal Education and the Rule of Law, John Cribbett, who was at the time an AALS Executive Committee member and also Dean at Illinois, called this the silent raison d'etre of legal education and the lasting claim for public and private support of the law schools. Making our case is both urgent and important. In this age of information overload and soundbite reliance, we cannot assume that a concept as complex as law will be understood and appreciated without our sustained efforts. That's especially true in the current environment, I believe, where many aspects of law are troubled and vividly troubled. Race-based violence and racial inequity in our criminal justice system, growing access to justice gaps as economic inequality widens, honest businesses struggling to compete against countries that do not value law and justice, deepening ethnic and religious conflicts and resulting migration surges, devastating gun violence, expanding in number and in scope. The list could go on and on. Let's be honest. The public views law either as a shield that protects the rich, especially if the rich are white and perhaps also male, or as a sword that cuts down the poor, especially if the poor are also Black or undocumented. We must acknowledge this public view while also knowing and critically knowing and helping others to know that adherence to, not rejection of, the rule of law will help us with these conflicts and more. We have a good case to make that law matters, and it's time, maybe past time, that we made it. So I'd also like to take just a moment to share 3 quick hopes then about my theme of why law matters. My first hope is that we can engage this theme together throughout this year, not just at the annual meeting next January in San Francisco, as important as that is, and I invite you now to plan to come. Certainly for that meeting, I will be seeking your ideas for plenaries and other programs that engage this theme, but I also hope that many schools will make this theme an explicit part of the day-to-day life of the law school. Many of you do this, of course, already, and we want to help promote your work at AALS. And if there are ways that I and other EC members can be a part of programs you plan or activities that you want to plan, events you host, etc., please let us know. We want to be engaged with you in that way. Again, we are seeking to be effective partners with and advocates for our members. We're going to be looking how to tell our story, our collective story, in more and more effective ways. My second hope is that this theme will bring us together, both across the academy and also more broadly across the profession. For better or worse, we are certainly all in this together. I am a true believer in inclusion and in diversity. And what that means for me is that I don't support replacing one form of orthodoxy with another. Rather, I believe we're at our best when we seek to value the dignity of every person and to create a climate where difference is valued and inclusion is practiced and prioritized. We should all care about law and justice and engage in robust dialogue about why law matters so very much. And as important as legal education is to that question of why law matters, so is the bench and bar, so are policymakers, and so is the public. Let us seek to practice inclusion in that regard as well, to build more bridges across our profession. Let us model the kind of civic community and respectful debate that our world both needs and craves. My third hope is that this theme can make a difference, that it will have actual impact and effect to us, to our profession, to our communities, and to our world. Perhaps it can help us jettison some of the old tropes of law, for instance, those of law being obstruction or law being just a cost that may be limiting to what we can accomplish. Perhaps it can help us understand law in new ways and help us appreciate again some of the historic strengths of law, perhaps applied to new contexts. As an example, law is an important stabilizing force in what is clearly a very disruptive age. Perhaps a more intentional focus on why law matters will help us to re-energize our teaching, our research and service, and also inspire a new generation of students to dedicate their lives to the law. Perhaps we can be stirred, not shaken, to press on, across challenging terrain, to be sure, to press on to be what we are made for, the part of the profession with the privilege and the duty to take the long view, holding in trust for past, present, and future generations the promise, as we heard a moment ago, of equal justice under law. Now, in closing, please don't misunderstand me in making why law matters my theme. I do not ignore, for instance, Grant Gilmore's provocative point that if law is viewed too narrowly as only focused on process, then in hell there is nothing but law and due process meticulously observed. Neither do I ignore his prior point that if everyone were peaceful and just, we would have very little need for law. But we all know we do not live in such a world. The world we live in is both beautiful and broken, and in that world, law may not be the only pathway to justice, but I believe it remains the most promising one that's within our grasp. You will all have different views about what justice means to you and different views about how to reach it and what pathway we should pursue. I celebrate those diverse viewpoints, and I thank you for joining me in this vital task. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and have enjoyed the part that you've been through so far, and I very much look forward to working with all of you, everyone in the Legal Academy, throughout this coming year and beyond, to make the promise of equal justice under law real. Thank you.